Okay, cool. So let's jump in.
Okay.
So thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. And I have a lot of questions for you. So even though when I met you, you shared with us the metaphor about the hippo having small ears and a big mouth, and for us to have big ears and a small mouth, I really want you to be the biggest hippo you've ever seen
Okay.
because you have a lot of wisdom
Thank you.
from all the incredible experiences that you've had, and we want to my goal is to extract it all from you so that anyone who is trying to build an in-house mentorship program can learn from what you did. So we really want to learn from your experiences, and our goal is to really help people build their own mentorship program.
Yeah, be happy to help. Anything you can do, certainly be happy to share.
All right, so let's jump in. So, just real quick to set the tone, what's your favorite thing or what do you love most about your work?
What I like most is really making an impact in a sense of influencing the organization, helping employees to increase performance and have the company win. So have a really good collaborative environment where everybody works together for one common goal.
Nice. Okay, cool. So, let's jump into your mentorship program. So, tell us a little bit about the mentorship program that you put together and what was the objective of that mentorship program?
Yeah, so the mentorship program I want to talk about, I designed a while back, and it was really around trying to make sure that we get our new leaders, either new leaders that are brand new in leadership roles or people who are aspiring to become leaders, to learn more about what it's like to be frontline managers. So really improving capabilities and how to communicate, how to coach their team, a lot of those things. So that was the purpose of it, really helping emerging leaders to be more effective as new managers.
Got it. And did you have buy-in from your team to implement this program for new leaders? Was this your idea or is this something that came from the top down? Did you have to convince people to give you resources for this? How did it come about?
It was an easy sell because there was no selling required. It was really everybody recognized there was a need. The nice thing about mentorship programs typically is you have a lot of managers or people who are going to be the mentees who want to raise their hand and say, I'm in. I want to do this. I want to learn. I want to improve, right? So that's number one. That's the easier part. The harder part is, to your point, is those people you appoint to be mentors, they may say, well, I'm really busy, or I don't have time, or I don't want to help, or whatever reason it is. And in this case, I was very fortunate because everybody knew there was a need and a want to create a program like that. So it was easy. It was really just my discussion with the leadership team saying, hey, here's what I think we need to do. It's part of our continuous development. We've talked about it from a succession planning standpoint to continue to develop our leadership team. So here's one proposal. Let's offer a mentorship program we had it structured in a sense of, as I said, new managers, supervisors, managers, and emerging leaders, people who are, let's say, team leaders identified to take on the next role. And then we said any director and above would become the mentor if they want to participate. So that's kind of how we identified the participants.
Okay. And when you went to the upper level colleagues asking them to participate, right? They obviously their calendars are packed to the brim full with meetings and work they have to do. How did you incentivize them? How did you get them to want to participate?
So getting them to participate was not, or to volunteer to say they want to be part of it was not as difficult. The more difficult part was that they truly hold on to that commitment to saying, hey, yeah, I'm going to dedicate my time, that they're not missing the meeting appointments that they have, right? That they're holding true to their commitment. That was something that we talked about at the beginning, to say, here are the expectations that we have of you, mentors, in being available. We're going to ask you not to reschedule. Obviously, there are certain times you might have to, but typically not reschedule. Be fully engaged. Be part of this opportunity, and help these mentees. And so we actually didn't have anybody back out. It was great.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, that's okay. So you set the tone from the get-go that there was going to be a structure to the program. So as say a certain cadence of meetings. What was that structure that you asked them to be accountable to, and why did you pick that structure?
So it was. So let me give you a little bit more context, Brian. So really, it was around having a defined structure program. So a lot of times you have mentorship programs that are, call them, more casual. This one was a lot more defined when we actually also had training. We had training. We identified people. We said, hey, if you want to be part of this program, you need to participate in this training session to understand what it's about, the commitment we're asking you for, and by the way, and then you have to apply as being a mentor. Same with if you got to apply if you want to be mentee. And then we said, tell us 3 things that you think you can offer to help, right? So maybe you can say, somebody said, I really know a lot about a P&L or balance sheet, or I know a lot about how to performance manage somebody. Different topics. Pick any topics, right? How to present better. Any topic. And so then we looked at, we asked the same thing of the mentees to say, what do you want help with? So as part of that, we also set the proper expectation. You and I talked about this when we went to the conference. The expectation is we have a structured meeting. You have to meet every week. You have to meet for 6 months, so it's a continuation of meetings. After 3 meetings, you have a so-called no-fault divorce. Basically, after you've met 3 times, then both parties can notify me, right, the person who organized it for the company, to say I'm backing out. And the reason for that could be any reason, but ultimately it was if they didn't feel there was a match, either party, they didn't feel like there was a trust established, because for a mentor-mentee relationship to work effectively, it has to be a level of trust, because otherwise it can't be open. You can't help either way. And so we set all of that out at the beginning so people knew what they were getting into. That was really important, that we set the proper expectation. We also knew that would give us some buy-in from them to really want to be successful. So that's how we laid it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And why is 3 your magic number? So I've run several mentorship programs and I saw so much drop off even after the first meeting. Everyone was very excited to get connected to their mentor. There's a lot of buzz around the first meeting. And then to get people to meet a second time was difficult, and to get them to meet a third time was like 1 in a million. So why was 3 your magic number? And what did you want them to accomplish at those 3 meetings?
Yeah, so the 3 was more of somewhat random. There was some logic to it. So the logic was, the first meeting is really more, let's introduce each other. Let's talk about who you are, tell me about your background, who I am, tell you a little bit about my background. So we learn about each other. That's kind of number 1. Number 2 meeting is more around, let's talk about objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to get out of this mentorship program? And then the third is really the beginning, the kickoff of the mentorship relationship, call it, right? And by the third meeting, I felt, and we felt as a team felt, that you should have a good sense if you're clicking or not. Again, both sides. Because I've been in mentor relationships where I know it's okay, but it's not the person doesn't completely let go. They don't. I know they're holding back, right? So as I said, if somebody's holding back, it's going to be hard to mentor them or be mentored, right? So that's why we picked 3. Now for us, we never had a problem with people dropping out. So when you said only 1 meeting dropped off, I think partly because we set a high bar of expectations at the beginning. You had to commit, right? You had to apply. You had to go through the training. We had a big support for it, and the organization itself was very supportive, right? So the leadership was supportive. So because of that, I think we were very successful in not having this drop off. But I do feel it's important for people to have an out. And when you're out, it doesn't mean that you're done. It just means, okay, you're out. Let's find somebody else for you. It's not like the end of the world that's why it's okay to drop out.
Nice. And it sounds like you had a very sophisticated onboarding process. You mentioned this training program before they could even start getting matched or getting connected. So what do you find was the most important thing in that training, in that onboarding? And what was it imperative for the mentors to know? And what was super important for the mentees to know before they even got started?
Yeah, so you know this, Brian. So one thing that always comes across is that the mentees are excited to participate because they want to learn something. And there's always this side effect that people don't think about, that the mentors themselves learn a lot. They learn so much from actually mentoring people themselves from their own leadership standpoint. So I think it's very beneficial for both parties. And for us, what we really made sure they understood is this is a commitment. It's investment in them, that we are investing in them, the mentee, in continuing to develop them. And that meant that they had to take the lead. We made it very clear. They take the lead, not the mentor. The mentee has to drive it. The mentor is there, available, help, and everything else. So they had to be invested. And the mentor was more around, as a mentor, you have to be careful that you don't overstep. So that's why we did some of the training to say, don't tell people what to do always, sometimes, but ask questions that help them think about how to think about their career, how to explore opportunities or whatever they're coaching them on, helping them on. So just preparing them, I think, was really important of realistically what it meant to be a mentor or mentee.
And I love that you prepared the mentors to ask questions to empower the mentees to think for themselves. I find that is a very easy way for me to learn about myself. Did you, off the top of your head, did you have, say, a couple default questions or way of teaching them how to ask questions and how to get that conversation or how to get the real words coming out of the mentee's mouth?
It was more, the way we structured it was a lot more around like situational leadership. When you think about situational leadership and how to ask the right questions and really walk through the scenario. So we walked through, okay, if you're a new hire, an employee comes to you manager, and asks questions, probably you have to tell them what to do and not say, what do you think? Probably, right? Because they just don't know. But as you expand your round out your leadership competency, ultimately, you have an answer, but you want them to be prepared to bring the answer, right? So we just walked through some scenarios. We had them in groups to practice a couple of times, but that was it. It was really more walking through what the expectations were.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So both participants, mentors and mentees, went through the onboarding program, and now it was time to make the matches. Did you have a criteria of how you were matching people? Was it random? What was your system for making matches?
Yeah, I would tell you that it was perfect. It was not. The way, so I mentioned earlier, we asked the mentor and mentee to identify what, as mentor, what can you bring, right? How can you help somebody? And we asked the mentee, what do you need? Who do you need, or what do you want to work on? And so we used that to match to some extent. That's one criteria. Second criteria, we looked at levels, right? Where are they in the organization? Does it make sense to have somebody a higher level, lower level mentor this role, right? So a little bit of that comparison. And some of it, honestly, is based on what we know of personalities, right? So if it's in-house, you know all the players. You know that this person is a personality A, right? Do you match them with this kind of style or not? So you have a little bit insight there, what you believe might work best. And as I said, it wasn't perfect, but it worked for sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. And how long did you run your cohort for? And were you tracking KPIs along the way so that at the end of the program, you were able to write your case study and circle back with the team and present results? So what was the duration of the program? What were you measuring along the way? And how did you know if it was successful?
6 months. The program was 6 months. And of course, it didn't end at 6 months. So it was basically structured for 6 months, but we never said you have to stop at 6 months. And in fact, majority of them just continued to be informal connections. And they built strong relationships. They continue to reach out. But what do we use for success criteria? I'll tell you the one we used, but and a lot of companies use this criteria, which is, did the mentee get promoted, right, in a certain amount of time? That doesn't necessarily mean that the reason for the promotion is the mentorship, but it's one way of measuring. Just like when you do leadership training, you measure to see they went to the training, were they promoted in, let's say, in a year or whatever time frame you put in place. Is there a true correlation to that? Maybe, maybe not. That's one way to measure. The other one is, of course, turnover. Do you have people that leave? People who were part of the mentorship program, did they leave the company? And that was another way we measured. And the company I worked for at that point when we did it didn't have high turnover in the first place, so it was not a huge concern for us. But we were very successful in that sense. We had people that were promoted. We had everybody who entered the program stayed. at least for the duration of when we measured, which was a year after.
That's interesting that you share that, because I spoke with a woman who runs a mentorship program for VCCP London, which is an ad agency in London, and theirs is more of a corporate social responsibility mentorship program where they're teaching inner city high school kids how to be ad agency executives.
Wow.
And she has reported that she's made 150 matches, and she's reported that all of the employees who participated in it love it, and it brings them so much joy and satisfaction to the work that they do. And she says that it has accounted for retention at the company. And I said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. How come you don't publicize it? And she said, well, I've had getting that very specific attribution of the connection between the mentorship program and retention. What would you tell her in that situation to how to bring more value or communicate the value of her program?
I think it's a fascinating question, right? And I can totally see how that would work in her situation, the retention. When you think about, I don't know how much you know about management studies, but if you think of a Hawthorne study, which really goes back in time, where you think about paying attention to employees, right? If the company pays attention to employees, therefore engages them, they're more likely to stay and perform. So by having people participate in the mentorship program, they feel special, right? Especially if in my process you apply and you get accepted, you feel special. So when you feel special, you're more engaged, you feel more valued. And so therefore all these side effects occur that people stay, get promoted, and perform better because of this Hawthorne effect, essentially. And that's kind of what you're talking about with her scenario, that you had a tremendous amount of engagement and people wanting to stay and continue with that organization, which is fantastic.
Interesting. The Hawthorne effect. Okay. I have to read up on that. So, okay. So that program was in the past, but times are changing every day, and we have more online meetings, we have more returning to office culture, we have AI coming in more and more. So if you were to start next week to implement a brand new mentorship program for your organization or for a new organization, how would you implement the perfect program today? What would you keep and what would you change?
That's a great question. So there are a lot of, like you said, things are changing. There are actually, if you think about new legal guidelines around mentorship programs, right? You have to be aware of those. There are a lot of things you have to think about today. I will tell you that since the pandemic, ultimately, we know, and even a little bit before the pandemic, we know the level of engagement of employees has decreased across the board. And so part of it, this is my assumption, doesn't mean it's based on research. Part of it is because there's a less of a real connection you have with people, right? You and I talking through video now, and it's very different when you and I met in person. You just have a different relationship, a different connection. Right. And so the key is, and I don't have an answer to it. I'm just telling you the biggest challenge will be, how do you really build the strong connection with somebody virtually? I mean, you can always say, if you're local, when we get together, let's grab coffee. That'll be great. But sometimes you can. Sometimes the way the company's structured, you're virtual, it makes it more difficult. So I don't have a solve for that, but that is something we really have to think about, if you ask me. The biggest thing to think about.
Interesting. So you think the biggest challenge is, how do we build rapport in a virtual world? And that rapport is important for the mentor relationship?
Yeah, because it builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you can't build trust in this relationship. It's just faster and it's deeper to have it in person.
And you feel like when the trust is there, more wisdom is flowing and more challenges are being solved?
Yes, because look, if you and I are in a mentor relationship, you're my mentor, and I don't feel completely comfortable with you, I'm not going to tell you about every single problem I have, or for that matter, open up to be vulnerable about what I just did. Where if we had a good relationship, I would tell you and you say, okay, I get it. Let me tell you what you could do now, right? That's what I mean about this open relationship. If you have a true open relationship with a mentor and mentee, you're going to be much more impactful.
Got it. All right. I have one last question. I want to end on a sweet note.
Okay.
Which is, thinking back to the mentorship program that you shared with us, was there a moment in the program that made you think to yourself, this is exactly why we needed to create this mentorship program?
Yes. Let me tell you what it was. It was when there are two things. One is when the mentees came to me and said, I'm learning so much. I really appreciate the program. So it's the feedback, right? That's number one. And number two, I was a mentor to a mentee. And the mentee that I was working with was so appreciative. And she told me all the time about how great it is to work with me, not just me, but in general, to have a relationship like this where she can learn and grow and ask questions about, hey, here's what I want to do with my team from a leadership standpoint. What do you think? Does that make sense? Right? So this feedback that I received was basically confirming. And in fact, we continued this program for 3 years, 3 iterations, 3 programs, right? It wasn't just one. We just had one cohort go through it, second one go through it, and another one go through it. So we continued for 3 years because we saw the value. And then we slowed down only because we basically covered the majority of the employees or the ones that are part of the program.
Super. And did you ever have any of the mentees become mentors in those 3 years?
Yes, we did. Actually, a couple people, 2 people. Not only did they do well, but they also got promoted. Remember, we talked about promotion, and then they were eager. They were like, hey, look, I'd love to go into this program. I'd love to be a mentor because I want to give back.
Super. All right. Well, thank you so much again for sharing all of this with us and with me. And I will do my best to disseminate this to everyone out there, because I think it's valuable, it's juicy, it's nice to see how you did it from your point of view. And I think everything you described is actionable, that really even a one person HR team or one person in a company can get something like this started, at least on a small scale.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm glad I can give you some of my opinions. Hopefully they work. Maybe they don't, but I hope they work. They work for us. But Brian, thanks for taking the time to invite me to talk about this topic. Certainly critical and important, especially during this time.
Likewise.